A very good morning to you. It's good to see you on this Tuesday morning. I was about to say Wednesday, Tuesday morning, right here on Your World. Welcome to the show. My name is Winnie Lubembe, and of course we're drawing closer towards the end of the month of June, and of course we would not allow that to happen without talking about infertility, because June is Infertility Awareness Month, and according to a new report published by the World Health Organization, around 17.5% of the adult population, which again roughly 1 in 6 worldwide, experience infertility. In fact, infertility is so common that the World Health Organization has recognized it as a public health issue for couples across the globe. Despite the magnitude of the issue, solutions for the prevention, diagnosis, as well as treatment of infertility, including assisted reproductive technology such as the fertilization process or IVF, are affordable. But what exactly is it all about? And of course, my biggest question today is, will we ever get to that point of acceptance when we talk about IVF? Because there's also a lot of, stigma, debates surrounding IVF, and of course, the lengths at which people would go just to make sure that they have babies, and of course, what this process is like for them. All right, so that is the subject of our conversation today, even as we mark the Infertility Awareness Month. So you want to stick around until the end of the show to learn more about the same. But we have a very simple question for you this morning, and of course the question is, would you ever consider IVF? All right, would you consider in vitro fertilization or IVF process? It's very easy for you to get to us at NTV Kenya, both on Facebook and on Twitter, or better yet, give us a call. The numbers will be down on your screen, and of course our lines are officially open. All right, so if you want to get in touch with us, do you have a question for Dr. or for Cecilia? Of course, we look forward to what you have to say. So Dr. I have a few comments here. So someone says, this is on Facebook, all right? So someone says, that is all about IVF, okay? This is Fred Hassan Jamal. And then we also have June Penina, who says, how much does it cost? And then Agustin Marucci says, consider no. Okay. And of course, Lucy, still on Facebook, says, yes, shida ni pesa. So of course, we'll talk about the whole process and the cost. But let me introduce my guest. Like I said, on my immediate left, Dr. Kireki Omanwa. He's not so new here. You've been here before. Who's a consultant obstetrician gynecologist, a fertility specialist, and the president of Kenya Obstetrical and Gynecological Society. Karibu sana, Dr. So good to have you.
Thank you
the last time we were talking about this, the last time you were here was like last year.
I think it was a year ago.
Time really flies.
Time is really flying. Yeah, we are becoming younger.
Right? So true. And of course, we also have Cecilia Karanja. Again, not so new, to us, I think some of us, but first time here on my show this morning, right? Oh, you've been here before? Okay, no, but first time I'm hosting you on the show. Karibu sana. Cecilia Karanja is the founder of Fertility Kenya. Again, and this is an NGO, which again we'll be talking about as we continue with the conversation. So Cecilia, so good to, first of all, see you after so many years.
Yeah, good to see you,
Good to see you again. Karibu sana on the show. And of course, your story is a story of hope and resilience and just never giving up. And of course, we'll be getting to hear your story in just a moment. But Dr. can we just start with the basics, right? I mean, how would you define infertility in like medical terms? Considers infertility? Because there's some people who'd say subfertility and then infertility.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to the show. And also, thank you, NTV, for this very important program, because what we are doing, we are actually enlightening people. And as the Bible says, my people perish because of lack of knowledge. So basically what we are doing is trying to pass this knowledge to the public so that they know about this issue of infertility. You mentioned about the statistics. 17.5% of the adult population actually have issues with infertility. In this part of the world, actually the numbers can be slightly higher, which is paradoxical in that here we have the highest number of babies born, and then we also have the highest numbers of couples who have issues with infertility. The World Health Organization defines infertility actually in two ways. There is what we call primary infertility, and there is secondary infertility. When you talk about primary infertility, it is defined as a couple, a man and a woman, who are in a relationship. We don't go into the depths of what kind of relationship, and who have regular intercourse, where regular means 2 to 3 times a week, and a period of 1 year has passed, and there is no pregnancy. There is a small caveat to this. If the lady is slightly older, let's say 35 years and above, then that period is shortened to 6 months.
Okay.
So if the lady is older, 6 months, regular intercourse, no conception, that is infertility.
Okay.
In secondary infertility, again, the same sort of principles apply. Is a couple, again, in a relationship, but the difference is that this couple either have a child or have children, or they have been pregnant before, the lady has conceived before, and now they're trying to have another pregnancy, and it is not happening, and the lady is not on contraception and is not breastfeeding, because breastfeeding can also be a sort of method of quote-unquote contraception. And again, the same caveat applies. After 35, then it's not 1 year, it's 6 months.
It's 6 months,
yes.
I hear. But most of the time, which is more common, is it primary or secondary?
We actually see quite, in my practice, I'm seeing quite a lot of primary infertility.
Okay.
Quite a lot of primary infertility.
And of course, we get to understand then why that is the case. And it's something very interesting that I was reading, and I was also listening to you, and you said 30% of the ladies would have the problem, right? But for the men, it's like between 30 and 40%.
Yes.
But majority of the times we hear women blamed a lot.
Absolutely.
For the same. So of course, we also want to understand why this. And also in sub-Saharan Africa, the numbers are higher compared to the Western world, which again, we would think it should be the opposite, right? Yeah, so would want to understand why as well. But Cecilia, this subject is very close to your heart because you have been through the journey for what, 11, 12?
Yeah, for 10 years.
10 years.
Conceived on the 11th.
Yes. Okay. So you were married twice.
Yeah.
But you're married now.
Yeah,
and a mother of 2 amazing boys.
3 beautiful
now.
babies. Yeah, 3.
Oh, I mean, look at that. Clearly, I saw you a long time ago, right? But let's go back. So the first marriage, you were not, quote unquote, and I'm using this word very cautiously, not the problem. Right?
Yeah.
But again, it was thought to be you.
Me.
And at some point you were thought to just, believe to have gotten married just because you parted dowry, right? And all those things. So can we just go back to that time?
That time I remember I was just a little girl, very young, very innocent. I didn't know what fertility is, and Pop got into a relationship and I knew I will get my baby.
Yes.
I loved babies from, I don't know what happens. The people who love babies don't get them. Like, yeah, there's a friend of mine.
It's so weird.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
So when I got into this relationship, I thought immediately I'll get a baby. So the first year came, second, third, and nothing was happening. Yeah. So on my journey, I decided, let me go to the hospital. And I was confirmed that they did all the tests and they confirmed that I was okay. But they refused to include my partner then. So on the 4th year, when I kept on going back to the hospital and they kept on giving me medication, that is when they realized, Allah, we've never introduced the gentleman. Yeah. And that is how now they asked me to come with him next time. Okay. And he was done the sperm analysis. Unfortunately, he was the problem. Okay. He had low sperm count. Okay. And he was in denial and he refused the treatment. Yeah. So out there, everyone believed I was the problem. Yeah. But as an African woman, you hide your man. That's true. And you want to carry the blame. Yeah. So every time I went, so every time I went and I went to their home, they kept on asking me, where's the baby, where's the baby? And even after I knew he was the problem, I never disclosed this to anyone. Until now, because the relationship was very violent. Yeah. I decided to go for help because I went for counseling, for pastors to just pray for us and talk to us, because the stigma, I guess, and also the ego in the man he could not handle it. So he was removing it by being very violent to me.
Yeah.
And finally, we couldn't stay together. After 6 years, we broke.
We decided to
and
separate, yeah.
that is how I ended up losing my relationship.
Yeah,
and
this marriage.
Yes,
Okay.
just because I could not get a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we see this a lot, and especially in most cases where it's the woman who's being blamed, and then of course cases of violence, you know, sometimes would rise.
Yes.
It might not necessarily be like physical, could be emotional, could be, you know, you know, all these other forms of violence as well. And I'm just gonna throw this to you. Why is it that we see a lot of women being blamed for the same, despite the fact that statistics show that it's actually more men who have the problem as compared to the woman?
I think for the simple reason that women are the ones who manifest the fruits of the labor that has been going on behind closed doors. And because if that abdomen is not growing, then the problem is her. Men, we don't have such an issue because men, as we say in Kenya, mbele iko sawa. But most of the time it is not sour.
It's not
like
sour.
you see in Cecilia's case, whereby 4 years, 6 years, and the man was in denial. Even after you have, you know, you're confronted with a test results which show there is an issue, instead of actually going ahead and saying, now, this is a problem, how do we go about it? How do we solve it? And then the fact that you say that it was an issue of low sperm count, it is something that we can deal with. I mean, even if there was no sperm at all, what we call azoospermia, we can still find ways of trying to get that, those sperms, you know, from the gentleman. But again, I think when men are confronted with this issue of you are the problem, I think it hits us in our ego, that now I'm a man, and a man is supposed to do 1, 2, 3, 4 things. I'm supposed to take care of my family. I'm supposed to, you know, to do this. I'm supposed to bring to sire children, and here I cannot sire children. So there is something wrong with me. And the other thing is that as opposed to women, whereby you can sit and have a problem. If there is a problem, you can talk about it, bring it out, dissect it. Say, you know, I had somebody went to this doctor. I had huyu alienda hapa kasaidiwa. Why don't you go and try? I can even take you there. Men, we don't do that. We can't share that information.
If anything, you try to hide it.
Actually, we hide it. We hide it. So now that comes back in other ways. The violence that you talked about, you know, it can be physical, it can be psychological, you know, and so on. You're trying to sort of cover up for that defect that is behind there.
Is behind the scene. And then the whole question about Sub-Saharan Africa versus the Western world, and the numbers are higher, which again is because ideally, because of lifestyle, you would think, right?
You think it's the other way around.
Yeah.
Now, it is interesting. First of all, the fact that today we are talking about infertility on TV and people are watching, I think is a big step in the right direction. Because then there are many couples out there who will say, Allah, kumbe, this problem is not only mine. There are people also who have had this issue. And for example, in Cecilia's case, they had this issue and now she's a mother of 3 babies. The issue of the paradox that we have the largest number here of children, and yet we still have the largest number of infertility cases. In some cases, actually even up to 30% of the population. We have what is called the infertility belt. It's even written. Researchers have done it. Coming all the way from Mozambique, crossing over into Tanzania, coming into parts of Eastern Central Africa, and then going all the way to West Africa. Now, this is an area whereby, again, you have the highest number of children being born and the highest number of infertility cases. If I can just try to transpose it a little bit, what I'm seeing in this part of the world, in Kenya, because this is where I'm working now, we have a high percentage of young women coming because of blocked tubes. It is the biggest problem that I'm seeing. As opposed to the West, where the bigger issue is the age of the woman. But then that is also creeping to us slowly, because now we all know that there are more ladies going to school, more ladies going to, you know, accessing, you know, higher education, you know, and so on and so forth. So by the time you finish your schooling, you start your professional career, and then later on is when you think like, I don't have a baby, I need to have a baby. 35 years plus has hit, which is a problem in the West. Here, about 80% of the patients that I see actually have issues with the tubes. They have the blocked tubes, they have fluid in the tubes, the tubes are stuck to the pelvic walls, meaning they are not able to work the way they are supposed to work, and so on. There are also other issues of endometriosis, for example, issue of fibroids, whereby 30 to 60% of women of African origin during their reproductive period will have fibroids. The size, the location, and so on, and the number will vary, and that can affect, you know, fertility, and so on and so forth. Now, the issue of us having higher incidence of infertility here and less in the so-called developed world, it again is because of, number one, we don't have access to medical aid. The issue of diagnosis, the issue of qualified personnel, the issue of, okay, we have a problem, we have diagnosed it, how are we going to deal with it? You remember you asked the question, what is IVF? Somebody is naninino. So
level of awareness.
So awareness is still not to that level yet. So the 30% of or so could be an issue of lack of knowledge, lack of access to specialists, lack of access to treatment, lack of access, you know, personnel. By the way, we only have, I think, 2 or 3 Kenyan embryologists. An embryologist is a person who works in the lab, such that once I have collected the eggs and the partner has given us sperm, they are the ones who actually create the embryos or the beginning of a baby. We have very few of those. So we have issues of access, we have issues of affordability. There was another question, you know, and so on. So I think that contributes a huge way to that 30%.
Two cases of the same. And Cecilia, again, so the first marriage, you were not the problem, but for the second one, you went to the hospital to get checked, and they found blocked tubes and fibroids at the same time. So I'm just curious to understand your reaction, because for the first time you were told you're okay, you're not the problem, right? But the second one you're told, listen, there is blocked tubes and we have fibroids. How did that make you feel? Were you relieved that you know what the issue is, or were you angry? Because now it's like, how is it then that I am the problem?
Okay, I think 6 years of struggling with infertility is not small.
No.
Small time. So when I got into this other relationship, I wanted to show the world that I did not have a problem. So I was there to show, like, guys, I can get pregnant. And like immediately, we stayed for maybe like 6 months and I could not get pregnant. So I decided, let me this time go immediately and get checked.
To understand what's
and when I went, I was found that I had a problem. I had blockage of tube and I had fibroids. Should have seen me. I asked my doctor, you are the same person who told me that I was okay. Now you're telling me I'm not okay.
It can be confusing and devastating, and you know, all those things at the same time.
So now that is when now the doctor explained to me that this is what happens. Fertility changes with time, and you can be okay today and you're not okay the other time. And let me tell you, I was so hit. It hit me hard because I knew this time I'm gonna get it right. And unfortunately, now the partner that I had could not wait because was not supportive at all, and he could not wait for me to undergo the surgery. Could not support me in terms of the finances. And after like 3 years, we broke up. And that is now when I went into depression. Because you can imagine, I'm that one person who gets so excited, to introduce everyone to my partner and everyone. And now we have broke up. And I don't even know how to face people. What am I going to tell them? What am I going to tell my friends, my relatives? and this thing crushed me. And the fact that I could not get even this baby, I was like, no, I think I'm just done.
I mean, and we can only, you know, empathize, you know, with what was happening at that time. Because I want to imagine how much of a toll this must have taken physically, emotionally, you know, psychologically, in all aspects of your life. Because in your words, you said you could not go to any baby showers.
Never.
You felt less of a woman.
Yeah.
And it's just too much. You know?
I also blocked my friends.
Yeah.
I could not talk to them for like a year and a half. I could not talk to anyone. They would call me, I would not pick. And I isolated myself. And until I decided now to go to the hospital to seek for help, that is when now my journey started and my testimony started.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And of course, we're so happy, first of all, that you're okay to share this part of your life. Because even when we were, you know, just thinking, okay, can we get women to come and talk about this? A lot of them were like, you know what, we cannot talk about this on TV, and that goes to show
and that
the
is
level
the challenge
of stigma,
we get,
right?
Yes. We get a lot of challenges.
Yeah, and even some have gotten babies through IVF, which again, Dr. You'll take us through that process. But they were like, I cannot talk about this on TV. So you're stigmatized for not having a baby, but you're also stigmatized for having a baby through IVF. And I wonder, will we ever get to that point of acceptance, you know, that it is okay to have a baby, or it is okay if you're struggling with this problem for a while, just allow someone to go through the process and even trying to get treatment. So, Dr. I wonder, will we ever get to that point?
I think we will.
Okay.
Because we have started. We have been talking about this. It's the fact that, as I said right at the beginning, the fact that we are coming here talking about IVF, I mean, talking about infertility and the possibilities of treatment. I think we've started well. And the trajectory, I think we are going well. Only instead of June only being the Infertility Awareness Month, it should actually be every month.
Yes. No, I agree. I agree, yes.
If I can take an example from the HIV, the AIDS problem that we had in this country, or basically in the world. In the beginning, it was stigma. You could not talk about HIV infection. Even if you saw that this patient actually is dying in front of you, and you have all the, you know, the symptoms and everything just points to that. You could not even mention it. And then we had to use surrogates of this disease. We called it the big disease, you know, Kamdudu, you know, whatever. But I think we crossed the Rubicon when people who are prominent would actually come out and say, I actually have HIV. I'm HIV positive. And I'm actually taking medication. And I remember when Nelson Mandela, the late, came out and said, you know, my son died because of HIV. And then people are like, Allah, if this can happen to such a prominent statesman, and he has actually come out and accepted, then it's not really so much, it's not a big issue, it is a disease just like any other disease. So the day we'll have our prominent people come out and say, you know what, I have been struggling, but look, this is what it is, and this is the process that I went through, and look, we have a baby. I know of a story whereby one of the prominent people in this country actually went to another country, South Africa. Not him, but the children. They had issues. Of course, they went through the IVF process, and luckily they got pregnant the first time. They came back, delivered a baby, and then after 2 years, it's like, what is happening? We need another baby. You know, it's like on demand. And they had to take another trip, a shopping trip to South Africa and whatever, and they went and did that, and they came back with another baby. So, you see, and stigmatization to that extent that I even cannot tell my own parents that we have a problem and that we have actually going to look for this solution elsewhere, and that solution is XY, and this is what we have. So the day we come out and say there are people here, prominent people, I mean, there are people who have come out, which is okay, but the fact that Cecilia is here and others refuse to come and they say, no, we can't talk about this because people will look at us differently. So you are damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. I don't have a baby, I'm worthless, depression sets in, you don't want any connection with your friends, and when you have these babies, you actually don't want to say that I actually went through this process. I've seen couples who come and they meet at the reception, it's Allah. So even you have this problem.
Yeah, like we talk about it in hush tones, which honestly should not be the case, because again, people go through struggles, and even this bad manners that we usually have. It's like people get married today and tomorrow, like, where are babies? You know, and all this, and you don't know. A year in, 2 years in, 3 years in, we still put a lot of pressure on people to have babies, and yet you don't know what journey those people are. So I think we should be more of like empathetic than just giving putting people into pressure and support. Absolutely. All right. So how about you take a break? But of course, when we come back, Dr. would want to understand more about IVF so that people don't ask you nini. But Cecilia as well. After a while, though not easy, you are able to pick yourself up and of course just go to a hospital, get checked, and you went through surgery as well, which again you'll be taking us through the same because like we said, now you are a proud mother of 3 children, which is just beautiful to hear. All right, so let's take that break. But of course, when we come back, the question that we asked you, and that is, would you ever consider IVF? We'll also be going through your feedback as well. So stay with us. This is Your World.
Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted? Stop right there! Tell me, sister! Are you having a blast watching my life get ruined?
Why are you asking me? Did I ruin it? You did all this yourself. And you blame others like always. It was obvious from the start how it was going to end.
Think about your mother. She's having a very hard time because of you. Now you take your bags and go to your room quietly and quickly.
You think you can order me around now?
2 out of 3 Kenyan parents felt that they don't spend enough quality time with their kids. You can help change this by giving a generous voice to Storytime. Visit our library of homegrown audio stories at cadbury.africa and make Storytime sweeter.
Oya, niaje wazee watu wangu wa power, DJ Mwapa hivi kama kawaida. You know how we do it kwenye radio yako 96.3 Nation FM, where good music lives. DJ Mo, DJ Kamuzi alongside MC Jawochi, the host with the most. Au sio?
DJ Kamuzi, the musical chef.
She wants to be like.
Kutoka radio mtu wangu tunaingia kwenye TV na pale hivyo tunaletea ngoma zingine Ital 2, tunaletea mpaka guest all over the world kutoka Jamaica, Kenya, East Africa, name them. Ama ni aje Mo?
Yes I, na kama kawaida sisi kama Jam Down tuingia kwenye area kwenye mtaa yako mazee. Jam Down on the road mazee, tuambie ukuje wapi?
Jawochi kila sato anakuletea reggae news, what's trending.
Yeah, this and much more from 7 p.m. Nation FM.
Alafu kuanzia 10 mpaka maidha mtu wangu #JamDownKE. Awola.
My mother told her that. She didn't know what it meant to be a mother. Diego, did you know that your aunt had lost a baby girl?
My aunt had a daughter?
That's what she told her.
First time I've heard of it.
Her mother, Robert De Niro, she's not going to leave Chato. The best thing is to accept the fact there's nothing we can do.
Then why don't you just kidnap her?
Because that would be madness.
He has 3 other women somewhere else, doesn't he?
And how do you know that?
I just guessed it. But that's exactly how he can help us.
Head over heels.
Bluebird peanut butter, made with 100% pure peanuts and a good source of omega-6. Grow healthy and happy kids with Bluebird peanut butter. Available in 200 grams, 400 grams, and 800 grams. Buy a pack today.
Furahia maisha bora, linda jamii yako, linda biashara yako. Chukua bima leo. Tuna bima ya maisha, afya na ajali, mali hata elimu. Chukua bima leo. Linda jamii yako, linda biashara yako. Chukua bima leo. Tuna bima ya maisha, afya na ajali, mali hata elimu. Chukua bima leo.
Bluebird peanut peanut butter made with 100% pure peanuts and a good source of omega-6. Grow healthy and happy kids with Blueband peanut butter. Available in 200 grams, 400 grams, and 800 grams. Buy a pack today.
All right, welcome back. Glad you're still with us. The show is Your World, and of course today it's all about dealing with infertility and also getting to understand IVF technology. All right, and of course the question that we're asking you, very easy. Would you ever consider IVF? And first of all, how much of IVF do you understand? All right, let's just start from there, because a lot of people would ask you, Nini, okay? So the question is, would you consider IVF process? And if you have tried, what was the journey like for you? Again, we also want to hear those success stories as well. So at NTV Kenya, both on Facebook and on Twitter, is how you can reach us and share with us your story. There's someone who had a question here. Let me try see if I can get it, but they were asking about the success rate. Yes, so this is Zablon Orina 1 says, ask the good doctor what the success rate for IVF here in Kenya is. To the public, do you know people who have gone through this process and succeeded in getting babies here in Kenya? So I think we'll talk about that once we understand, you know, the whole IVF process. But Cecilia, very quickly, you know, can we just talk about your journey, your journey, you know, towards treatment, you know, in surgery as well, because like you said, you had to save up some money to go through surgery, and now you have 3 babies.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I would say treatment of infertility is not cheap.
Okay.
So I took a lot of time to get this money, but I decided to save and go to the hospital. And finally, I did laparoscopy. The doctor told me that the only solution that I had is to do laparoscopy. Okay. Laparoscopy is where now they remove the fibroids through the camera, Daktari, you know that, and then they open up the tubes. Okay. So that is what I was done, and thanks to God, I think I think 1 year after, I conceived.
You're able to conceive.
I conceived my firstborn, and it was such an amazing experience. And I would say that during that process of me going to the hospital, it was very challenging because I could not get this money. Okay. Remember, in the other relationship, I did not have a very stable job, and so I had a lot of challenges getting the money. And finally now I decided to go. In fact, I went saving kidogo kidogo, and finally I got and I did the surgery, and I thank God I have my babies. And let me say, there's so many people who are going through the same. They want to go, they know the treatment exactly, but they cannot afford to go for the treatment. They know they need to do IVF because we've done a lot of awareness, but they don't have that money. But I thank God, at least nowadays with the surgery, NHIF is covering, like, I think 30–40% of the money
of the same. And even talking about the same, Doctor, I think honestly there's a lot that needs to be done, especially when it comes to you know, affording, and you mentioned this earlier on as far as affordability is concerned, because majority of the people are usually not able to afford such kind of treatments.
That is
okay.
true.
So for IVF, Cecilia, you did not have to go through IVF because you went through treatment and
I conceived naturally.
Okay. So Dr. someone who's watching and thinking, oh, okay, so what is this whole IVF technology process?
Okay. Actually, IVF basically means in vitro fertilization. Okay. So I'll take you back a little bit to third form biology. Yeah. We know we have the womb. And if I can say that, let's say my hand is a tube. Okay. And where it is connected to my body, that is the uterus. Yeah. and just below the tube is the ovary. And an ovary is where we store the eggs, or where the eggs are stored. And you have ovaries on both sides. We have 2 ovaries and 2 tubes. So if I stretch my hands a little bit, so if you can say these are the tubes, and just below them we have the ovaries. So normally what happens in a menstrual cycle, when a woman starts having her periods, that is called day 1, day 2 of her periods. So as the period progresses, an egg is actually developed in the ovary. And we have been created in a fantastic way. Ladies, during the beginning, you have about several hundred eggs which are sort of mobilized, but out of those several hundred, is only 3 or 4 of them which will actually grow. Call it selection. And out of those 3 or 4, it's only 1 of them which will actually become what you call a dominant follicle. A follicle is what carries an egg. So at the right time, between day 9 and day 12 of the cycle, if the cycle is regular, that egg will be released from the follicle. And as soon as it is released, it will be pulled into the tube by what we call fimbria. Fimbria, finger-like projections right at the end of the tube. And as it pulls it inside, that tube actually does movements so that it pushes the egg into the tube. And that is now ovulation. Ovulation has occurred. And that is the time when a lady feels the urge to have intercourse. And let's say the intercourse has happened, sperm swims through the cervix, the opening of the womb, and into the uterus, and into that opening, because there's an opening here where the tube connects to the uterus, and it will go to that side where they are ovulating. So they actually it is the sperm are directed. Today it's on the this month is on the left, so they will sort of go to the left. They will not go to the right, by the way. So
the body is interesting. Okay.
Now, once they get, because there are millions of them, they'll go and congregate around, swim around the egg, and then the best man, as it were, the best sperm, will actually drill a hole. As it drills a hole, you know, it's like somebody who has a hat. It will remove that hat, and then genetic material will go into the egg. And so fertilization occurs, and the baby starts forming. So we call that an embryo. So that will be day 1. Now, as it has been fertilized, remember we talked about movement, and it takes about 5 days. All this time, the tubes are doing that, you know, type of movement until it gets into the womb, and the womb is ready. It will find a place in the womb. Again, it drill a small hole, attach itself to the womb, and where it has drilled that hole, there are tiny vessels, so it will start getting nutrition, and the pregnancy is attached. That is the natural process. Now, if there is a problem, let's say, with the tubes, tubes are blocked, tubes are stuck, they are not, they can't make that kind of movement, or maybe the number of sperm is low. So now what we do, the quality is not where it is supposed to be. So now what we want to do, we want to circumvent these issues which will not make it possible for a woman to get pregnant naturally. So again, we start right from the beginning. Day 1 or day 2, a patient comes, we do a blood test, we check our hormone levels, we do a scan to make sure the ovaries are okay. There is nothing growing there, because sometimes there can be something called a cyst growing there, which will stop her from starting the treatment. If everything is okay, we start giving her injections every day.
For how long?
For about 10 to 12 days. Sometimes it goes to 14 days. But as we are doing this, we'll be checking every 3, 4, 5 days to see how the follicles, remember I talked about a follicle? A follicle is the housing which carries an egg. How these follicles are growing, what is the size, what are the hormone levels. Because we want to do this, why? Because we want to calibrate and see, does this woman need more medication? Do we need to reduce it? Do we need to add something else? And so on. So let's say for about 10 days we have done this and we are happy with the process. The growth of the follicles is good and they have matured. By maturity, we mean that the size has gone to about 18-20 millimeters. We say stop. we give her another medication to what we call a trigger. And the trigger is basically to make the eggs inside the follicles to mature and ready for collection. Then we take her to theater. We don't cut anywhere when we are getting the eggs, because every time we talk about the theater, tunafikiria tunaenda kukata. Hapana, hakuna mahali tunakata. So we take her to theater, put her to sleep, and then we use a long needle. And then we poke the follicles, because in the follicles on the scan you see they are dark, is a dark because there is fluid there, and the eggs are actually inside there. Of course, we can't see them. So we aspirate the fluid plus the eggs, and then we put them in test tubes. We give them to an embryologist who is working in an IVF lab. An IVF lab is very highly specialized. So once we have finished this, the gentleman will give us a sample. And of course, here is where a challenge is, because men say, this is an African, why are we doing this? And they do this by masturbation. So once they have given us that sample, the embryologist will actually now clean it. Because in a sperm sample, we have good sperms and bad sperms. So we remove the bad sperms. And then we are left with the good sperms. What do we mean by good sperms? These are sperms which have a head and they have a nice tail. Some of them may have two heads, they may have a round head, they may have an amorphous head, and so on and so forth. These ones we don't want. And they have to be swimming. Olympics, well, like, Manyala, they're 100 meters. So these are the ones the embryologist takes, chops off the tail, and then very delicately takes the head, now the sperm, because this is where the genetic material is, and injects it into the egg.
Because again, like you said, we can't see them with
we can't see
eyes,
them.
so
it is amazing that what we can't see is actually who we are. So it has the height that you are going to be this tall, you are going to have such a smile, you are going etc. And once that fertilization has occurred by that injection, they put it in an incubator. Warm temperature, 37.4, 37.6 degrees. It will start growing and dividing, just like what happened in the tube that I explained. It will start growing. The first day it will grow, it will divide into 2 cells, then it will go into 4 cells, then into 8 cells, and so on. Meanwhile, the lady where we collected the eggs from, we have given her medications. To support this baby now once we transfer it back. So after 3 days of growth in the incubator, we'll tell this lady, out of those 15 eggs that we've got, we have, let's say, 10 embryos. Remember, in the natural process, you can only make 1, sometimes 2. Very rarely do you make 3, extremely rarely. So now we take the embryos and say, look, we have 10 embryos. We can't transfer 10 embryos. Because if we did that and all of them too, it would be a tragedy. So maximum we do a transfer of 3 embryos. Maximum. So we take 3 embryos, and there is a way of grading to see which ones are and they're the best, which have the best chance of implantation. So we transfer maximum 3, but if the patient says, I want only 1, or I want 2, that is what we do. And after we have done that, we give her medications, and after 2 weeks she comes back for a blood test to see whether amefanikiwa ama hajafanikiwa. Now the question will be, what happens with the other embryos which remain? We actually freeze them. We freeze them in what is called liquid nitrogen at minus 196 degrees Celsius. So if you put your finger there, you actually burn it completely. And we can actually freeze them for 5 years, even up to 10 years. So you may have one baby this year, and then after 3 years you have another baby. So you don't know now, are they twins which are just are they twins? So that is IVF.
How IVF works. Interesting. I mean, it's just very fascinating to hear that. But the big question that someone asked, and that is, what is the success rate? Can we go
pertinent question. We cannot talk about success rate just like that as a number. There are so many things which we take into consideration. Remember, I talked about age in women. That is one very big factor. Remember, the older women become, the lower the chances of success. Why? Because the number of eggs actually reduces. That is 1. And 2, the quality of the eggs actually deteriorates with age. That will affect success rate. The hormone levels that we talk about will affect success rate. The scan, you remember I talked about a scan on day 1 or day 2. If there is something wrong with what we call the lining, because the lining is where the baby actually implants. if there is a growth there, for example, if there is a fibroid or there's something you call a polyp or whatever it is, that one will also affect success rate. The quality of the sperm as well. Because remember, we take sperm and the eggs and we put them together. So you may have beautiful eggs, but poor quality sperm. That will also have an effect. So by and large, success rate is about 40%.
Okay, not too bad.
Which is very good, I think.
That's really, really good. Okay, and of course, is there like a cutoff age? Because like you said, once we get to 35, of course, fertility, first of all, goes down.
Yes.
So I want to imagine someone comes to you at around 40, 45, maybe 50 and says, I want to freeze my eggs.
Okay.
Right? So is there like a kind of...
There is no problem with that. You come, it's okay. You want to do that, that is fine.
Yeah.
We will put you through some tests.
Okay.
Blood tests to look at her hormone levels and to have an idea about her ovarian reserve. Because we also do a scan as well. The scan as well as the hormone levels will sort of give us an idea where we are. And then we are very candid. We say, look, at 40, and let's say your hormone levels say is 0.5, it's not a very good indication. So the issue of freezing eggs at 40 does not make a lot of sense. Because first of all, we don't know how many eggs we'll get. We may get very few eggs. And then the quality may also not be very good. So we put actually information. Information is important for this person to actually make an informed decision. You say, look, if my wife was 40 and wanted to freeze her eggs, I would say it's not a very good idea. But if you want to do it, this is the information and these are the possible, outcomes. So we are here to help, to help her make a decision.
Absolutely. And honestly, just having, first of all, the information in itself, I think is a good thing.
Absolutely.
And it will help fight a lot of things, stigma included. We'll come back to you on that cost question
No problem.
that a lot of people are asking. But even Cecilia mentioned, listen, the treatment is not cheap. I mean, not so many people can afford, treatment for infertility. And of course, you've also, taken us through your journey as well. But I mean, at the same time, this is where Fertility Kenya was sort of like born for you. So do you want to, just take us through, what that is all about? Because a lot of women actually come to you and say, hey, listen, just through listening to your story, which honestly, we really, really applaud you for that, has helped a lot of people. So why is this so important to you to really be out there, be vocal about this, and just have as many people listen to your story as possible?
Winnie, thank you for this, because I struggled with infertility and it's not an interesting thing. So I'll not wish this to my worst enemy, because it's one thing that people say that the stigma behind it is like somebody going through, somebody who is in Mathare, going through the care. And the reason why I started Fertility Kenya is because I realized that when you're going through infertility, there's no one you can talk to. You don't have a friend you can open up and tell them about what you're going through. The only time you talk about what you're going through is when you go to Dr. Kireki. And maybe Dr. Kireki has like 5 or 10 minutes of your time. And then after that, you go home. And then no one wants to see you, no one wants to talk to you, nobody understands you. In fact, they condemn you, they stigmatize you. They tell you you removed your pregnancy, you aborted when you were young. All this stigma, you carry it. So you tend to just keep quiet. That is how I opened Fertility Kenya. Fertility Kenya deals with it's an NGO that deals with persons struggling with infertility, and we've opened up our arms to these people. So when they come to me or when they come to the organization, this is a place where they just get comfort. This is a place where they just they come, they cry, they pour their heart, because I have all the time. And then they connect with me because I've gone through infertility. So it's easy for them to just remove what they have, or maybe pour out what they are going through. And for that, God has enabled me to just connect with doctors like Dr. Kireki, and we've partnered with them. And through the journey, as Fertility Kenya, we don't have a hospital, so we connect them to the doctors, and they are able to get the help. So you come to me, we are able to tell you this is exactly what you need to do, because most of the time when you go to the doctors, they tell you do this, do this, do this, do this. But we find that most patients, I'm sorry to say this, are wasting a lot of time when they come to doctors. Maybe these doctors are not enlightened about IVF like Dr. Kireki is. So you find that a patient goes there and they're there for years just trying to get these children. And now we are able now to enlighten them with such media stations, and now with people like Dr. Kireki and myself, we are really talking about IVF process, because there's no reason. We always say there's no reason for you to stay without a baby, because there are so many options. We have laparoscopy, we have IVF procedure, we have hormonal medication, we also have adoption. So there is no reason whatsoever why you should stay without a child.
And that is your desire is to have a baby, because there's some people who openly say, I'm good, I will take care of my nieces and nephew and others, which is absolutely okay. And even just helping people understand this is not an individual's problem. There's a lot of people who've gone through the same, gone through treatment, and they're having their baby. So passing, you know, hope to the people, which I think is very, very good. Dr. Costs. Okay, but even before we talk about the cost, someone again who was asking about the success rate, again, like we're saying, IVF has been revolutionary. Here in Kenya, we have what, more than 2,000 babies who've been born through IVF?
Well, first IVF babies, I think they were twins, excuse me, born in 2006. Remember, the first test tube baby was born in July 25th, I think about 45 years ago, 1978. So we were a bit late to start this process here. But just the fact that, you know, somebody took that initiative and said, look, there is a problem here and I can actually come in and help you. There are some places, even now, some African countries where they don't have an IVF center, for example. So I think we are doing well. I think over 2,000, slightly over 2,000, maybe 2,500 children have been born through this process, ART technologies, as it were. Coming back to what Cecilia said, yes, it is true that sometimes patients will go to a doctor, and then the doctor will, you know, prescribe some medications and so on, and may stay there for some time. I think we need to be very clear here that if there is a problem, and you see 1 year has passed, 2 years, and there's no baby, I think you need to come directly to a gynecologist.
Sometimes people don't know where to go.
Exactly. And, come directly to a gynecologist. We have now, you know, we have referral hospitals, we have, you know, teaching hospitals and so on, where at least you'll have a gynecologist. And these gynecologists are trained by us, the University of Nairobi, you know, Moi University and so on. So they have an idea about what infertility is. There is a challenge, 1, 2, 3, go to a fertility specialist. So when we waste time by, you know, seeing sometimes other cadres in the health sector, and then you mark time there for a long time.
Sometimes even rogue doctors who might take advantage of someone. True.
So the best thing is to go to renowned hospitals. You know, there are public hospitals, teaching hospitals, referral hospitals, where we have gynecologists very highly trained. They do have an idea about what infertility is and what can be done about that. Coming to the issue of costs, you know, that is always
and it's not covered by, is it covered by insurance?
It is not.
It is not.
It's not covered by insurance. It's not covered by NHIF and so on, which is a big problem, because when you look at the majority of these patients, they're actually at the bottom of the pyramid, and the purchasing power, the earning power is also on the lower side. So when you get a 25, 26, 27-year-old patient who comes with blocked tubes, and the only option is IVF, and then when you talk about IVF, the average cost, depending, it varies from center to center, anywhere between 450 to 600,000. It is actually it's mind-boggling to get that kind of money. So what we are saying as the Kenyan Obstetrical and Gynecological Society is that this is a medical problem, just like diabetes, just like hypertension, just like, you know, you may need surgery for whatever it is. It should be, or even must be, taken care of by NHIF. Maybe NHIF may not be able to cover the whole cost, but if it subsidized this treatment, let's say instead of paying 400, 450K, it pays, let's say 200K. That one is a more palatable figure, because then it's easier to do a fundraising for 200K than for 450, 500K. So that is one of the biggest impediment. Number two, we have issues with access, because most of the specialists, subspecialists for that matter, are actually in the big towns, in Nairobi, you know, in Mombasa, and so on. So if we can sort of accelerate training, and for those ones who are interested in this field, so that they can actually go to the county hospitals, such that at least in each county hospital we have somebody who is a subspecialist in infertility treatment, who can be able to, you know, sort out these patients. And then apart from manpower, human resource, we also need now the infrastructure, because to run an IVF center is not cheap. The equipment, you know, we have medications, we have what we call media and so on, which need to be. So it has to be something which is done consciously. And we do it because it is in the Constitution that we are guaranteed healthcare to the highest quality, the highest quality, even reproductive health. And we are talking about reproductive health. So I think once we go in this direction, we sensitize the people and the government, whether it's the national government and the county government, that this is actually a requirement in the Constitution. I think we should be able to find resources to be able to push this forward.
Absolutely. Dr. Allow us to end the show on that note, because we literally need to get out of the studio. But thank you so much. And of course, like you said earlier on, this is a conversation that should not only happen in June, but this is a conversation that should happen every single month. So of course, we'll invite you over again so that we see what are some of these policies, what can we do to make this you know, as affordable as possible. But for now, allow us to say goodbye. So thank you so much, Dr. Kireki Omanwa, consultant obstetrician, gynecologist, fertility specialist, as well as the president of the Kenya Obstetrical and Gynecological Services Society, COGS, as well as Cecilia Karanja, founder, Fertility Kenya, which is an NGO. Asante sana, Cecilia, for coming by, sharing your story as well. And thank you for staying with us until the end of the show. I know you know better, but again, if you still have more questions, our social media handles are at NTV Kenya, both on Facebook and on Twitter. Reach out to us, and of course, we'll also forward them to Dr. But for now, enjoy the rest of your day. See you tomorrow. Goodbye.